Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Choose Positive Living right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful guest, who's retired, though she's just written a book, so how retired that is, I don't know. Jackie Heller, MD. She is a psychologist, psychiatrist, etc., but retired, and has spent the last 4 years bringing a wonderful book to you, Yesterday Never Sleeps. We're going to be talking about managing our inner saboteur, why we don't embrace the positive living, where are our choices. She says the big idea: deeply hidden fears, hurts, and longings may lead to symptoms eventually of maladaptive behaviors. Such unhealed wounds can become acute or chronic triggers if our defense against the reservoir of our pain are failing. They are all also triggered by a person, an object, a smell, a sound, a dream, illness, or more. Our buried memories and emotions surface in ways that may sabotage us. So what is what? Knowing our emotions can shift us here and now into the critical sense. Our feelings are rooted in the past events that may have no obvious context to today, yet control our attitudes and behaviors in ways that we don't understand. An effective way to confront our inner life, including our inner saboteur, is to get in touch with the shifts in our body that can help us label our emotion and interpret and understand our feelings. Mindful self-reflection enables us to become aware of our buried events from such past. Such reflections are a two-part process of focused self-exploration that involves going inward and upward, identifying our psychological sensations and labeling our emotions, and then thinking about what they mean. It involves introspective, combining introspective looking inward with selective looking at it as a spectator. So much more there to read, folks, which I really would invite you to go and do so. And of course, all this wonderful wisdom is in her book as well, which we're going to be talking about. Absolutely everybody on this planet has an inner saboteur. And that's because we are all conditioned by old programming, old patterns that have been imposed upon us that, quite honestly, we don't even know or aware that we're doing it or carrying it around with us. Welcome to the show, Jackie.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Yes, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. The saboteur, the old patterning. I mean, I think that's hardly a show that we don't talk about it, because it really does affect every choice that we make in life, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, our inner minds are made up, and this is strictly psychological stuff, but our inner minds are made up of people that were informative in our development, the important people in our life: parents, caretakers, family, very close friends, that sort of thing. And we have a running commentary, without being aware of it, of the predominantly important people and the things that were repetitive that we heard. And we take those things in and they form our personality. And some are more critical than others. Some are loving, some are kind, but many people have audible voices. They hear something in their head yelling at them or criticizing them. But the inner saboteur is more complicated than that. Just like our inner life is more complicated, because the inner world has relationships that comprise a good me, a good Jackie, and a bad Jackie, a good Jackie with a good mom, good Jackie with a bad mom. So there's all kinds of permutations and combinations of experience that we lay down as we grow up. And these things form what I call AMCs. They form these automatic mental constructs that become patterns of ingrained ways of seeing ourselves and ingrained ways of behaving. And they're automatic because 95%, the vast majority of what we do for our actions and our thoughts are out of our awareness. Can you believe that?
No, I
95.
can. I can.
And if we had to think about everything that we do all day, like I have to get out of this chair, now I
Yes.
have to brush my teeth. If we thought about all those things, we wouldn't get anything done because we'd be flooded with
Mm,
thought. So there are a lot of automatic things that we do. And then there's a lot of buried pain because we are survivors. We are meant to
mm,
evolve and do well. And so we keep ourselves from harm's way. So we have all kinds of mental defenses, and we have physical defenses too. I mean, if you put your hand in a fire, in a flame, you
yes.
automatically withdraw it. That's called conservation withdrawal. You don't have to think about it. You just automatically
Yeah.
recoil. And we do that with our psyches as well. So we tamp things down and we repress things because they hurt, and we don't want it. We don't want pain. We don't want mental, physical, or psychic pain. And they're all pretty much connected, very much connected. So we all have parts of us that are trying to express something that we're tamping down because things don't like to be our memories and our feelings don't like to be suppressed that much.
Yeah.
And there will always be something during the day that has weight to it that will attract that old memory. So my idea, which is not really my idea, but what I try to do is I try to help the unconscious become more conscious. And that's my focus. My focus is, how do we get to know ourselves well and sidle up to this unconscious part that most people don't want to know about because they're scared.
Yes. Paying attention, right? Being aware. That is caring. You know, when we step into awareness and we start looking at ourselves, um, not somebody that's the victim, the injured soul, but somebody that is trying to navigate through imposed pain, and trying to choose positive living, trying to choose a better way of life. But if you're not willing to be aware of it and really face it, there is no other way through it but to face it. You can't, you keep pushing it down. You can't take drugs. You can't take alcohol. You can't take any of that. It will always find its way to the top because it
Absolutely.
wants out.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. You don't have to dig into your past. Your past will find you.
Yeah,
It's important. And it's not it's not the trigger, it's not the reminder, it's the weight, it's the emotional weight of it. And this is very important, because what you're describing is the press of the unconscious mind to be known, and it's very important in order to manage these symptoms that we get. Because if we don't take care of knowing ourselves, we can't gain wisdom. And
exactly.
Aristotle, a very famous philosopher who I'm sure most people have heard of, said the beginning of wisdom is self-knowledge, knowing yourself.
Yeah,
And if we don't know ourselves, we can't create a boundary. We can't tell what's me and what's the other. And so, when a baby's 13 months old, that infant can tell the difference. That infant begins to know that he exists or she exists as a separate entity, and that's why you can start playing peekaboo games with them. They get a kick out of it because they know you're here and then they know you're gone. And if you don't have that ability to know yourself well enough to separate from other people, we do something that Hans Rosling calls the blame game. We point a finger and we say, "This is your fault." And we need to spend more time looking inward and knowing ourselves. And it's amazing how much we can accomplish when we do that.
it's the nurturing and the loving of self. We've been
Absolutely.
conditioned that everything is on the outside. We've been conditioned that our happiness is out there. And
It's
we've
not.
been conditioned that we've got to measure up to something. We've got to be a certain person. And that just causes turmoil and a lack of self-love, respect, or value within ourselves. And if we
Absolutely.
could just go in and kind of nurture ourselves from our inner child out, we would realize we're so much more abundant and so much more than we've ever given ourselves credit for because we've been living by this exterior condition.
That's very true. But that's what Freud calls the super ego, the conscience that comes at us from the morality of society, and society and parents and whoever it is, our teachers, what's expected of us. And that creates it's important because it creates law and order, but it also creates a lot of self-criticism. And to my way of thinking, what is loving kindness? What does being a good person really mean? It means you know yourself well enough so that you can love yourself and forgive yourself for whatever you think is your fault, and realize that, most of the things that happen to you growing up are not intentional, and you deal with that. But loving kindness means you can be empathetic. It means you can be other oriented, and that is very rewarding, intrinsically rewarding to people, to good people, because
Yes.
they're empathetic and they're compassionate, and that makes for good relationships. This is all scientifically
Right.
sound. I mean, it's not just me saying this, but the circuits in the brain that allow for motivation and for reward, the reward circuits are very fulfilled when you treat yourself well and when you treat other people well. And that's very important for people to understand, that neuroplasticity, the actual growth of nerve bundles from the prefrontal orbital cortex through the cortex and other connections, are basically the hallmark of resiliency, of higher order thinking, of cognitive abilities, of sequencing, of forecasting, of being able to think clearly, making decisions, having good judgment, planning, executive function. These things are all grow tremendously. And when we understand our emotions and we don't lay them on other people, the same thing happens.
The this is the science of it, the mechanics of it, the wiring of it, so to
Mhm.
speak, which is absolutely, definitely functional and proven, etc. But you talked about the psyche, and I don't think people actually understand the psyche, which is also scientific in the sense of what triggers things, but it's also that, for lack of a better word, just that spiritual connection, that outside of body, outside of mind connection, where you talked about harming yourself or not harming other people. I call that the love vibration. Because when you're in that higher
There.
frequency, you can't knowingly hurt anyone else. To do so would be to hurt yourself. And you're on that frequency where it is about kindness and caring and really wanting to see everybody rise up to this wonderful feeling of caringness. But at the same time, it also can get shattered very easily by the heavier vibrations and the negativity that is around us. So we have to be very, very selective in our healing process, or in our psyche of living at a certain level, of what we put around us or what we allow to be fed to us, because that really can
Absolutely.
upset everything.
That's a very interesting and important point, because you're talking about the energy that
Hmm.
emanates from people. And this is partly metaphysical and a little bit, far afield from psychology and psychiatry, because sometimes the twain don't meet, but in my mind they meet very well.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
there's a tremendous continuum, and this begs the question of, ignorance is not very good. We need to understand as much as we can. That self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, and I think I hold to that firmly. So yeah, I mean, I think if we understand that, we're all electrochemical particles, and we revolve around each other, and there are quantum mechanical entanglements between tiny particles that affect each other. And so, of course, we affect each other, we affect other people. So we have to protect ourselves from other people's negativity. And we also have to be positive ourselves. And how do we do that? Well, the best thing, to my way of thinking, is to be self-reflective. We have
Yes.
to have a self-reflective function. We have to I call it introspectating, because you have to go inwards. You have to be able to
Mm,
know your emotions. You have to be able to label your emotions and understand how you feel, because
yes.
at least 10% of the American population cannot identify how they're feeling. How are you today? I don't know. That's what they say. And it's very sad. I mean, schools are getting really good now about helping children
Mm.
learn how to identify their emotions. But then when you identify, you got your gut feeling. You know, you just had lunch
Yes.
with someone and they said something mean about your haircut, and they said, "Oh, the good thing about your haircut is your hair will grow back." You know, some backhanded compliment.
Right.
And so you feel a little crush, you got a little pit in your stomach or a lump in your throat, whatever your symptomatology is, and you don't realize it. But I call those delta moments, those shifts in the day where your mood changes. You suddenly
Mm.
feel, oh, I feel so sad. What happened? Why? And if you investigate those, you'll understand that the body is the beginning of oops God, the body recognizes things before the mind does. And when you identify your feelings, you can then go up into your head and think about them. That's a difference between telling us, that's between a story, difference between a factual story and a narrative. The narrative is an annotated story where you've thought about something and you've applied some awareness to it. And trusting your gut feeling means understanding what that experience is. And
Hmm.
if you do that, if you practice this enough, it becomes a habit and it becomes hard. The software sticks, and
Yes.
you can actually learn more about yourself, and it will take you to the past. The things that made you this way, that made you react a certain way, will come up for you. The things from the past, from your background, from your family background, whatever it might be, those crises, those little traumas, whether they're little traumas that accumulate or a terrible thing that happened that was a secret that you don't know about, they will come to you. And that's intuition. That's using your gut feeling. That's using your
Yes.
your your experience. And so that extends beyond the person. That affects your family, can for generations, these kinds
Yes.
of things. And
Yes.
so
Constant
so these are
competitiveness.
very
Yes.
important issues.
I call that the knowingness. This is where I feel the
Knowingness.
wisdom comes in. It's kind of
Yeah,
you're downloading that knowingness, and you don't know why you know it, you just know it. And it resonates with the heart and truth. And it goes into spirit interaction, and your mind will know what it needs to know when it needs to know it. And
absolutely.
it's
But you have to
extracting
work.
the knowledge. Yeah, it's extracting the knowledge that you need in there now, because this is data that's all up in here. But the wisdom to know how to use that knowledge, that gut instinct. And when you just you don't need to say, why are you doing that? Or that, I don't know, I'm just doing it. Now you know that it's the gut wisdom that you're going with. We don't trust that enough because society is always telling us it's the mind, it's the mind, it's the mind. And I can say the mind could be like a treadmill or a hamster mill coming round and around and around all the time if we don't incorporate the rest of our body and psyche, because the heart, spirit, and soul have an intellect too, and they need to be part of the equation.
I agree, absolutely. One thing I would add, though, is that trusting the gut means that you understand your feeling, but you don't react to it
Yes,
immediately. And
right.
so that's the
Assess.
key. The key
Yes,
is the key is no hair triggers, no knee-jerk
right.
responses, because that's what gets us into trouble. And so it's very important for people. We all have mini traumas, even people who haven't had terrible things happen to them,
Mm,
thank goodness. We all have developmental little traumas. We all have had a parent or someone not be nice to us over and over again in
mm,
some way. So we all have those bugaboos and those negative constructs, those negative AMCs, those automatic mental constructs, those embedded, entrenched patterns of behavior, patterns of being, with a warring factions, warring committees in our head, and the outcome of that is our personality. And so we all have that, and it's very important that we understand where that's coming from, and then we can take responsibility for
yes,
ourselves, and it opens up a horizon of like a flow chart or a decision tree of other paths, of fresh interpretations, of fresh ways to understand something instead of the old thing that you're stuck in.
yes,
And that allows for compassion, for sympathy, for empathy. So it's like when we drive our car, we have our rear view mirrors that help us see. We have our side mirrors, and then we realize we also know there's a blind spot, and that if we don't look over there,
yeah,
we could be in great danger. And we
yes,
all have these blind spots in our personality, in our psyche, in our deep unconscious, and we have to get to know what those are. Otherwise, we trip over them and we repeat them generation after generation, father to son, mother to son,
and we see war after war because of it, right? You know,
unfortunately.
the ripple effect of constant, you know, and all war
Absolutely.
does is create a new generation of hate and distrust, and the cycle goes on and on and on. And at some point, we have to be the ones to break the cycle, not waiting for someone else to do it, waiting for us to do it. And you know, like I always say, when something comes up, somebody says something, and you know, you're feeling a little about that. And it's like realize it's a projection of how they're feeling. It's not any reflection of who you are. And if it's come up, take that breath. Take a breath. Take a breath.
Absolutely.
Right?
Take a
This
breath.
wasn't really directed at you. This is something that they're feeling right now. It
Absolutely.
may brought up a trigger of a little insecurity or a time when, and you go, I'm no longer in that time. I can let it go. Right? But pause.
Exactly.
Take the
Exactly.
pause.
It's connecting the memory of how what happened to you back when
Hmm.
that originated the construct, and it's combining that with the feeling that you recognize now and putting words to it.
Yeah.
And that helps mitigate the intense raw emotion that people feel when they're traumatized.
Yes.
That's the amygdala that lays down those intense feelings that are often inchoate, that are wordless, that you don't know why you feel that way.
Yeah.
So for all people, we all have, or many, most of us, I would say, have some kind of feeling that we don't get it. We don't know, like,
Mm.
why am I feeling anxious? Why am I down? I mean, I have everything in my life. I have a good family. I have no reason to be upset. And that's different than depression. I'm saying there's just malcontentedness, or there isn't inner peace. And these things are very achievable, very
Yeah.
achievable. And I
I'd be
think the
willing to do the work though. That's the point, isn't
we
it?
need to do we need to do the
Yes.
work,
Yeah.
but like anything,
Hmm.
anything we want to get good at, we have to work at, whether it's playing
Exactly.
piano or writing a book. You
Yes.
have to work, and you have to establish a pattern so that
Hmm.
it becomes a habit, which is not
To
necessarily hard to do. It can be
no,
fairly organic, but
it's
you do have to
replacing the old
practice.
pattern. You can't get rid of an old pattern without inserting a new one.
Well,
And
and I
the
think that
and a new pattern will not be accepted unless the old pattern is gone.
exactly, or it can, they can live side by side as long as you are aware of them. I mean,
Yes.
we don't need to amputate anything. We just need to understand who we are and be kind-hearted and have peace with it. So for me, I think a mindful reflective practice is the most important thing, because when you go inward, and you have to develop a part of yourself that's kind of an impartial, neutral observer, a piece of yourself that no matter what you're going through is clear-minded, and says, okay, we're not going to react to this. I'm going to
Hmm.
take a look at it. I'm going to take a look at this emotion like a fly on the wall. I'm going to,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
Truman Show. You're going to watch
Yes.
yourself,
Yes.
and
Great movie.
then you can evaluate. You're not going to jump right in and react.
Right.
And that is the most important habit I think we can form when it comes to becoming a sympathetic, empathetic person. And
Yeah.
these kind of, and the other thing is, when you do, I mean, I have exercises throughout the book, about how to do this, because you have to do it with yourself, but you also have to do that with other people.
Hmm.
When you're with another person, as we are engaged in conversation, I have to be aware of where I'm coming from. I have to be aware of where you're coming from. I might have done a little research and listened to some of your podcasts to understand what your orientation is. And so you have to have conscious curiosity. You have to
Yes.
apply curiosity and interest in the other person. And
Participation, I think,
absolutely,
you know, I feel one of the things that we have done is kind of let life happen around us or to us rather than for us, because we're not willing to participate, we're not willing to inquire, we're not willing to have the conversation. We've become what I call headliners, where we sensation of the headline, and we're not looking at what the content is or what the context of the content is.
absolutely.
What does it mean to us? And it's get involved with people in the conversation. Why are they feeling like that? Why is it brought this feeling up in you? Be
That's
willing to discuss it. We're at actually a time period, I think, first probably time in history, we're actually talking about what sets us off or what causes depression or anxiety or the way we feel has been given permission. My time growing up, you just didn't talk about things like that. You kept it to yourself. We're now encouraging people to talk. We're encouraging people to share how you feel, not for sympathy, not to be your own violin, playing it over and over again, but to air it out so that you can understand it and somebody else can give you a perspective on it that you have not seen. So the conversations are good to have, not only with yourself, but with people around you. Why are you feeling like this? How are you stuck in an emotion? You reacted to something, and now
Mhm.
instead of spending that emotion and letting it go, you've now become emotional about the emotion and you don't know why you're still there.
That's very well said. I think that's very important. But I think we need to recognize that it's very difficult in this day and age to do what you're saying because we've lost our social contact
Hmm.
um, in the way where we use our senses. We
Yeah,
don't make eye contact, we don't touch, we don't see people, we don't smell, we don't because we're behind our computers
yeah.
and we're behind the screen, or we're typing all day. And
Texting. Hmm.
the average 10-year-old kids on there playing video games 8 hours a day, and they're in their room with other people on the other side
Yeah.
behind their screens. And so it's very difficult to lose that human contact.
Yes.
And that's making it very difficult. The other thing that's making it difficult, I think these are problems with society as far as communicating, is that everybody, as you said, people just look at headlines, sound bites, or headlines, or they just go to Wikipedia, or they get swept away by mass culture
Yes.
because of the worldwide, because of the internet. And there's good things about that, but there's also bad things about
Yeah.
that because people don't look inwards. If they look outwards, they're going to get someone else's answer.
Yeah.
And you can always select, you can always find someone that will resonate with you, because for every opinion there's someone else that will agree with you. So you can seek someone out who will toggle with your feelings and verify and support you, so that you feel you're right. So that causes a lot of kind of hyper individualism at
Mm.
the expense of the collective, at the
Yes.
expense of a group experience, which could be very important. Like we are the world and we're all connected and we're all one. It becomes this individual thing that can have some negativity. And so that's a little worrisome to me. And I think that's something the world needs to work on
Yeah.
individually and collectively. But everything starts at home with me, with you and me. Everything starts
Inside.
within ourselves.
Yes.
And I think that's very important. I mean, that's, even when it comes to, wars and stuff, I mean, the people that are like the geniuses about, genocide and terrible things, they say everything starts at home.
Yeah.
Everything starts at home with you and me. And, that's so if you can start with that level of things, there's hope.
There is always hope. And,
Of
sometimes
course,
people
there's
call
always
me,
hope.
somebody call me an eternal optimist. And I say, well, I don't actually see the point of living here unless I live in hope.
Absolutely.
Unless I believe that we can evolve, and unless I believe that we can create a better world. And I can't help the people that are still in the hate, the fear, the greed, the opulent mindset. It's up to them for them to journey. All I can do is support the people that have made the choice
You're
to
right.
rise up to another level, to
You're right.
support them on their journey of their own self-discovery. We'll see that we're all here to discover what our instrument is and to learn how to play it. And as a soloist, we can play beautifully. But when we come collectively to the orchestra and each in our own strengths come together harmoniously, we transcend anything as an orchestra. And I think this is something that we need to understand. It isn't about just joining something like the Borg from Star Trek and mindlessly being incorporated under one brain. It's about being the very best version that we can be in our beautiful instrument and bringing it to the collective so that we all benefit from it, how we can integrate it into each other's lives and become that system of those good vibrations that we need out in the
Ideally,
world.
from your mouth to God's ears. Yeah.
Yeah, God.
That's That's the way it should be, but it's not happening that easily. And I think that's because it's very easy to point the finger. It's very easy
That's
to
three
look
pointing back.
outward,
Yes.
and it's very hard to look inward, but that's really what we need to do. And we
There's
need
no
to
escape. Resistance
there's
is
no escape.
futile, right?
And we also need to be up. I mean, I forget how you phrased it a few minutes ago, but you talked about being proactive and not just
Mm,
being passive observers.
yes.
And that's the difference between an upstander and a bystander.
Yeah.
We need to be actively involved in making the world a better place. And that's but we can be selfish about it too, because if we go inward and we know ourselves, we get smarter. We get more intuitive, we get wiser, we can forecast our future, we can forge the path we want to walk in life much more readily if we know ourselves, because you know yourself. You're not going to
Yes.
go try out, for America's Got Talent if you can't sing. I mean, you're not going to be one of these people who can't carry a note, because you'll know yourself, and you'll know what your abilities are.
That's the
The other,
point. You know what your abilities are and
you
your
know what
own
your abilities are.
discovery. Yeah,
And
that's
another thing I want to point out, because I don't know how much time we've left, that's very important, is the having a personal narrative, having a
mm,
story, a life story. And we live for stories. I mean, Joan Didion said, we tell stories to live, because we survive by our stories, our communication.
we are the
And
story.
we are the story, but creating a lifelong narrative that's replicable, that's cogent, that's clear, that's full-bodied and dimensional. That is a very, very important thing we need to do for ourselves, because we need to update it, constantly update it for context, because otherwise we inherit stories that
Yeah.
may not be right for us. And it doesn't mean they weren't right for our parents. They needed to have their story so that they could survive and they could get through whatever they were getting through. But we need to update it so it makes sense for us. And so we feel good about ourselves. And so we realize who we are and not who they were, because
Right.
we can inherit wonderful things, but we can also inherit traumatic things. We
Exactly.
need to
Knowing
sort that
which
out.
what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you, right? And I think knowing
Exactly.
your why, I think, is very important. You
It's
know?
very important, because once you know why, you
Mm,
can relax. It's very gratifying to know why.
yes.
It's like doing a puzzle. When you put those final pieces in, there's a relief. It's a reward.
It's an
It's an
accomplishment.
it's an accomplishment. It's a reinforcing to the brain
Yes.
and to the heart and the mind that you've done something, that you've accomplished something.
Yeah.
And that's very important, because that the, reinforces you to do it again. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the important thing about, like, loving kindness and its connection to empathy, because if you're empathetic and you help other people,
Hmm.
and this is one of the key things about resilience, everyone will say, do good for others. Get outside of your head and do good for others. And the reason, I think, is because if you're empathetic, you're inclined to be good and do things for other people and help the world. And that is reinforcing you, because it helps your reward and motivation system, because it makes you feel good.
Yes.
And it's an intrinsic reward. It's intrinsic. You're not getting paid.
No.
There's no reason to do
No.
it for outside gain. It's because it's intrinsically gratifying. And people that are nice people and good people that people want to be around, that have good relationships, they are connected to themselves and they're connected to their ancestry frequently. Not always, but I'm saying that's an
Yeah.
ideal.
Well, I
You
mean,
know yourself, you know your history, and I don't think you need to invoke past lives. There's enough in this life. There's enough
well,
in your
sometimes they
parent.
follow you and you've got to deal with them, right? But,
Right.
this is not my lifetime. This is something that has come, unfinished business that has come over that you need to deal with. But, I think what you're talking about is the enrichments and abundance of our meaningful purpose.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. Thank you.
So, when we're there, we are actually what I call in the love vibration. We're in the meaningful purpose. Every time that we can create a smile or an aha moment or do something for anybody else, it's an enrichment to us. And it's, no, it's not about the ego, it's about the purpose. What are we here for? We're
Absolutely.
here to enrich each other's lives. We're here to create an abundant humanity. And
Right.
we have been taught that lack, lack, lack is all we deserve. No, we deserve enrichment, because the more we are enriched, the more we are abundant, the more our cup runneth over, the more we have to share, the more we have to illuminate and just encourage and enlighten others along the way. And this is the thing that's, I think, really important is when you're on this journey of self-discovery, make sure you're around those kind of people. One of the
Absolutely.
things I feel that we're seeing today, and I really love you to touch on this, is we're seeing so many youth stabbing each other, mindlessly killing other people, hurting themselves. I believe apathy has kind of taken over. When you still have pain, you still have empathy, you still have feelings. But when there is nothing and they've gone to apathy and nothing stimulates them, nothing, they don't care about anything. And I touched on this at one point in my life where I was going there and I knew it was dangerous because if I went to apathy, I knew I'd lose myself completely. How do people get there and how do we help them get back?
Well, I mean, apathy it's a really good topic. It's a whole can of worms. It's a big subject, but I think apathy and indifference have a lot to do with hopelessness and
Mhm.
despair. They're on a continuum, and depression, and feeling downtrodden, feeling like if you're having tunnel vision, like you can't get out from where you are. And I think that quickly turns into apathy. I have a chapter in my book that I call Asocial Media. Now, mind you, this was written 4 or 5 years ago. By the time it gets through the pipeline, it's 4 years later. So but I write about the hikikomori, which is they started off as a Japanese group of young men, and basically the idea is they're shut-ins, they're social shut-ins, and they basically give up on life. They give up on school, they give up on everything, and they live in their rooms day and night, 24/7, and they're surrounded by technology and video stuff. So they're tuned in through technology only. I mean, literally, they will leave the room to go to the bathroom when no one's around. They live with their parents typically, and they're in their 50s now. This has been going on for a long time,
Mm,
and this phenomenon spreading around the world.
mhm.
And basically, these were kids that were not they were average. They were not stellar students. They were normal, regular kids, and their parents were very overachieving, and they were either shamed or they had, or maybe they had. It's questionable. They had, mental illnesses, but they're basically they give up and they just shut in and they don't do anything, and it's a crisis, and there are many reasons for this. I mean, one reason is, as I said, we've lost contact. I mean, I spoke to a kid during COVID who said he's afraid to go back to school. He was 13. He said he doesn't know how to talk to people.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
some of it has to do with the family unity and having conversations and role modeling, interactions with others. But,
Yes.
but some of it is this kind of dissolution of a nuclear family. But some of it is just this hopelessness and despair because we're anomic. We kind of are, these kids live on the internet with avatars and with they airbrush themselves and they have these perfect personas, but they're completely unknown. No
Mm.
one's attuned to them, and this kind of apathy, I think it's always almost always mixed with anger
Mm.
and hopelessness and despair. And it's very important not to let people capitulate to despair. And in that sense, my mother was my role model because she was a Holocaust survivor, and she became a public speaker and a spokesperson for education and for understanding that we all have goodness in us and we can
Yeah.
all do better and we can all help other people. And that's a way to elevate ourselves. And so if we can't capitulate to despair, and we have to do what Viktor Frankl called it tragic optimism, seeing the silver lining, figuring out what good can come of your tragedy, what good can come of what's happened to me, instead of woe is me, I hate the world.
Yes.
So
Yes.
these are important things. These are important things that relate to resilience and to bouncing back. And there's a lot more I could say about that, but in a nutshell, I think that's important. And there are many programs that help children who come from disadvantaged situations, who feel hopeless and helpless. And it doesn't take that much. I mean, it really doesn't take that much. You could connect to kids and give them a reason to feel hopeful. And
Yeah.
certainly being a role model, having gone through terrible things yourself and surviving with gratitude and with love of life and with zest is enough. It was enough for many of the young people that
Yeah.
my mother helped. Just to see a woman with joie de vivre, enthusiasm, excitement, helping the world. She wasn't a miserable person. She was a very happy person
Yeah.
and very content and had peace of mind. So, and this is after going through the Holocaust. So, it's very doable. And when you talk to these people that survived and had a post-traumatic growth and came through, they all have the same thing to say. You have to help other people.
Yes,
And that's a reward
absolutely.
that's highly motivating.
Yes. It's the exchange of energy. It's giving people that need the energy, and as their energy grows, the flow goes, and it starts feeding everybody in that vicinity. And I've, from doing this 11 and a half years and interviewing some extraordinary people, um, the courage and the strength, the resilience, the discovery of their abilities, but the heart and soul of who they are today because of what they went through. They made
Absolutely.
a choice. They made a choice. Do I still stay the victim? Do I still stay in this suffering and this misery? Or do I decide to rise up and discover more of who I am and not what's been imposed upon me? And it does take courage and it does take resilience. It does take strength. But my God, the reward of
Mm-hmm.
being a person on your own terms, living in a light that no one can take from you, being that beacon of light for others as an inspiration
Yeah.
is so utterly divine. So, why wouldn't you do the work? But many people need the help. And one of the problems is they don't know how to get the help. So let's talk
Well,
about your
my book
book.
will help them. My
That's
book
right.
will help
Let's
them.
talk about your book because not only are you addressing the problems, but you have some exercises in there that people can participate
Yeah,
in
I
order
do.
to reveal it. So
And
tell us.
they're not my own. I mean, they're not derived from my own brain exclusively. These things are well known. I mean, my book is attachment theory based, so it's based on the kinds of attachments that are healthy and the kinds that are not
Mhm.
healthy. Without going into that much, the first part of the book, I explain some basic psychological concepts that you need to understand about human nature,
Yes.
about our defenses, the ways we protect ourselves, the kinds of things we say to people, and why we do what we do. I mean, it's really a book about why are we the way we are?
Yeah.
Why am I who I am? How did I become this way? And so the first part is it does that. And then I have tons of case histories that are all camouflage, they're not identifiable, but lots of case material. And then I go into trauma itself about what's toxic stress, what's the difference between PTSD, the epigenetics, all of that, which is a very sexy new word that people are throwing about, which is our epigenetics and our inherited trauma
Mhm.
is mostly through direct contact, how you experience the person in your family that has post-traumatic, that
Mhm.
has PTSD. But there are all kinds of other genetic things that are going on that's complicated, but it's an interesting topic. And it's still in the mostly worm and plant stage. Most of the stuff you read about people are from retrospective studies, but I go into all of that. And I go into social cataclysm
Mhm.
and oppression of people, and how the collective mind and the collective psychology is very different than individual, because when you get groups together, they act irrationally, emotionally with those trigger responses. They don't think, but individuals can be rational and use their mind
Yes.
reflectively, and they can really think things through. So that's one of the dangers of mass hysteria, mass psychology. So I go into that. And then the last part, what I do is I talk a lot in the beginning. I explain why the narrative is important, why having your life story is important. And then the last two parts of the book, I demonstrate that with my own memoir.
Mhm.
My own memoir, and I use the principles that I explain in the beginning of the book, the cycle, like automatic mental constructs, what that means, and having the delta shifts, focusing on the here and now, the present day, and what that means and how that will take you to the past. And dreams, I have a dream chapter that where I really go into a dream that nagged me for 50 years.
Mm.
It's probably the best chapter in the book. It's very interesting because I had a dream when I was 5 that plagued me on and off, intermittently,
Mhm.
when the right stimulus was there, when the weight of it was in an
Mm.
object or in, something that, it was a dream about my sister turning into a cherry pie. And so I'd see cherry pie, I'd remember the dream, or,
Dear, oh my
and I'd
goodness.
eat cherry jam, I'd remember the dream, or I'd see a stick figure or whatever, lots of associations. But it bugged me for a long time. And it
Mm.
took me, as I was writing the book, I figured it out. Like I kind
Mhm.
of got the pieces in the puzzle together, and I was gratified, and it left me. It
Right.
completely solved the problem. So these things, you can get a hold of your emotions, you can tame them, and this kind of looking into yourself is a good way, and it's free, and it's it doesn't it does you don't need drugs. I mean, drugs or
Yes.
medications are important, but I'm saying for someone who feels they don't understand why they're uncomfortable, what their anxiety is about, why they're so nervous, and there's no physical explanation. They've been evaluated, they don't have anxiety disorders, they've seen psychiatrists, and there's something going on, they don't get it. People who feel like there's something missing to their understanding, this is a great book, because this will really help you plumb the depths and learn some things. And as you make these connections to your past, to your history, to yourself, the connections start growing. It's like I analogize it to hyperlinks. When
Mm,
you're searching, when you're reading an article, there's a
yes.
hyperlink, you go to that, and it opens up vistas. It's like your brain becomes like the internet, and you learn a lot, and it makes you think a lot, and you really can get places with it. So the last two parts of the book are my personal narrative, and I go through my life, and I give a lot of good examples of what I'm trying to explain. It was a very organic process. I mean, I had no intention of writing a book. I was responding to a family email with a letter, and I got responses from a niece who said, "This has changed my life. What you told me about grandpa is so helpful. I can't tell you what's been nagging me." And she had said that to me before, years ago. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to expand this letter about my dad. And it turned into like a 30-page, 20-page, 30-page chapter. And I sent it. And she said, "You have to keep doing this. This is
Yes.
so helpful." And so I thought, I started thinking about narrative consistency and memoir. And I thought, this is a good idea. Writing actually is very good for memory consolidation and
Yes.
for making connections. Writing is actually better. Recent articles really seem to show that from neurological standpoint, the neurophysiology of it, writing is more consolidating of memory and making linkages. It also gives you a break from thinking, dealing with the person that's right in front of you.
Yeah.
You can think your thoughts through.
And just letting it write. I've just done my memoir. It's in the last stages and about to come out. And I'm in the final thing of, before it's sent up to Amazon, of reviewing it. And my brother is a professional literary master, a major. So he kind of edited and he said, "There's a theme here. You talk about loneliness all the time." And it's like, I
Interesting.
just let the book write itself. And then in reading it back, it became very revealing, and
Mhm.
yes, I do talk about it a lot, but then I realize it's been the thing to plague my life, of always feeling lonely in a crowd, in a marriage, and a this and a that. And it's like, wow, uh, I knew that I felt it now and again, but I didn't know that it was such a part of me. And I think that, just don't dictate, I'm going to do this chapter and that chapter. No, let it come out. Just
That's
let it come out, whether it's a book that's going to go out or whether it's just for you, just let it come out. Because I think that reading it back is so revealing
it's
to
very
yourself.
revealing.
It's your
Yeah,
subconscious
and
writing,
people,
right?
well, yeah, because when I was little, I created a mental diary. I would not keep a written diary
Yeah.
because my parents, my father didn't know how to write well or read well, and so he had to memorize everything. And my parents had suffered the Holocaust, and everything was burned, and everyone was killed and stuff. So they had no paper, they had no nothing. My mother was a bookworm, and she had all the books in her head, and she kept herself alive by telling herself stories while she was in
Yes.
hiding. And so I didn't want to write anything down, because I thought my diary could be like Anne Frank's, like I'll get
Right.
killed and the world will read it after, or it'll get burned. So I just kept everything in my head for a few years. And I didn't realize until I started writing 5 years ago and I started writing after my mother's death, because I was devastated, and it was really cathartic, and it was really, I mean, I knew about journaling, but I just didn't do it
Yeah.
myself. And so it was really very cathartic, and it was very helpful. And as I wrote, I kept making more and more connections. As I said, my
Yes.
brain just got, I mean, I've been trained to do this, but doing it on yourself, I mean, I'm my own best patient, because I know
Yes.
my life. I know my life better than anyone else, or I know my life better than anyone else's I've met. So it was really fascinating for me, because as I was writing, I developed more and more connections. Like, I have to change the story now, I have to amend it and add these new tidbits, because Everyone has trauma. Everybody has difficulties. And a friend of mine asked me a few years ago, she goes, Jackie, look, I was a latchkey kid. My parents worked hard. There was nuttiness in my family. What makes you different? What makes your story different? Why is your trauma and mine's not when we have the same effect? I said, the difference is that the emotion, the intense emotion that my parents felt, they both had PTSD. They were both severely traumatized. That emotion, even though they tried to hide it, it filters through.
It
It
does.
filters through an invisible sieve, and
Yes.
it's there, and it gets, and it's scary because you have these intense, frightened, terrorized, terrified people, and there's anxiety, and you don't know why. You don't know why, and you start attaching it to all kinds of things. So
Mm.
you start interpreting, your perception of experiences are altered. So, for example, I mean, a very simple thing is, if let's say let's say someone, slapped you across the face regularly, right? So if you're just at work and you're having lunch and your boss picks up a glass of wine, you might flinch and think they're going to throw it in your face,
Right.
or they might slap you, or they might hit you. So you might be skittish. But ordinarily, you're going to assume that he's going to drink it, or he's going to toast you. You're not going to think he's going to throw it in your face or
Right.
hurt you, right? So that's what happens to people who are around trauma, even
Yes.
though it's not discussed. It doesn't have to be
No.
spoken about. The fear is there. And I use a very minor example, but I could go on and give you examples from my life that really point it out, but you can read it in the book.
Exactly. Why Yesterday Never Sleeps? Why that title? 'Cause it
because
fascinates me.
because
Mm.
the unconscious, which, I mean, because humans have too much hubris, too much, too um too stuck up about knowing themselves well. And
Right.
we are masters of self-deception. We lie to ourselves without knowing it.
Right.
And because the unconscious is really omniscient and omnipresent. It follows you around because we're trying to be balanced. We're trying to achieve homeostasis. We're trying to survive as best we can using the least amount of energy. And so the things that happen to us, that plague us, they come up over and over again. And we need to work them out if we don't want to repeat them. If you
Right.
don't care and you want to repeat them, don't work it out. But we have to become better people, and we have to break cycles of trauma. It behooves us.
Right.
And
It's
people are
part of what
shocked.
we're here for, right? This is what the
Right, right.
life's journey is all
It's
about.
what we're here for. But here we are in
Yes.
2023, and human nature is no more evolved than it
No.
was,
And that
thousands of
scares
years.
me. That really just scares me because
Yeah, because
we
because
have such heights to go. There's so many beautiful levels that are waiting for us. And yet we've chosen. This is all go back to choice again. You can choose positive living where you
yeah,
choose to do the work and rise up and go
yeah,
to this higher plane. And then you can also choose to stay in the pain and the anguish and the anger and the blame and everything else. And I go, how's that working for you? Because
yeah,
it's draining and there's illness that comes from it. Everything starts breaking down because of the dis-ease in your body, but creates disease in your body. So it's
right.
like, when are we going to learn that we need to do this work
Well,
in order to evolve?
it takes a few million years for DNA to change.
Haven't
So
we been here for a few million
from
years?
that
Yes.
standpoint, but we need to mount that issue. We need to surpass that.
Yeah,
And the only way, to my way of thinking, is by going inward instead of outward, and learning how to be kind to yourself, learning how to love yourself, putting your own mask on before you try to put someone else's on. You have
exactly.
you have to learn loving kindness, and you have to learn to forgive what's happened to you, and you have to learn to make those connections, because otherwise you're going to blame your parents forever. You're going to
Yes,
blame, and we can do all that. I mean, we have tremendous capacity to do things, but we have to not be afraid of the past. We have to not be afraid of our unconscious, and you can figure stuff out, and change your life. You
it's
really
up to
can.
us. It's up to our choice. What are we going to feed? I
It
always
is,
say, be
for the
careful
most.
what you seed and what you feed and nurture, because that's what's going to grow. And if you keep growing weeds, it's because of what you're seeding. It's what you're feeding.
I mean, look, I don't want to be Pollyannish about it and say everything is life choice. There are sicknesses, there are people
Yes,
that are ill, and
it's
there
still
are
our choice
days,
what we do about it, though.
generally, yeah, but
Yeah,
not everyone's, and some people are so disadvantaged they can't get
right.
out. they're stuck in dire circumstances or downtrodden. Some people cannot get out,
They need
and
help.
and they need help, and the whole world needs help. I mean,
Yes.
we have had so much trauma in the last few years
Mm,
that it's a global crisis. There's a global mental health crisis.
exactly. Exactly. And we're weary. We're worn out and we're weary. And what we really need, and I think people have just become saturated with one thing after the other. If it's not Mother Nature, if it's not each other, trying to kill, annihilate each other, if it's not trying to manipulate and control each other, it is like, when are we, the universe gave me a saying about 5 years ago. The universe is going to shake us up, to wake us up, for us to step up and change it up and grow
Yeah.
up. Now, grow up vibrationally, but also grow up.
It's a collective that's the problem. The
Yes.
individuals can do a lot, but collective is problem.
But what the individuals can become the collective if we're all
Yeah,
willing to
we
be
need enough. We need
right,
enough of them.
right, exactly.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm a do-gooder, trying to teach a few people how to become a better,
exactly.
kinder
By
person.
example and by the how. A lot of people say, yes, but how? Well, you've written it. You've put it in your book. You've shared it. The how. We know the why, but
But
now the
it's
how.
it's to become good to yourself, because you
Yes.
can't be good, you can't connect well, you can't have secure, wonderful, safe, healthy attachments if you don't know yourself. And there's a strong positive correlation between self-reflective capacity. I call it introspectating, because you're going inward and you're watching at the same time. There's a tremendous positive correlation between that and secure, healthy attachments. The parents that have high reflective function and that know themselves well and know their kids. I mean, there are things that you have to know about people like that. You have to have conscious curiosity. You have to be able to repair ruptures. You have to be able to fight well and know how to deepen a relationship when you restore a bond. That's very important. So there are things, and you have to have empathy. You have to
Yes.
know your emotions. You have to be able to be attuned. You have to be plugged into the other person. You have to understand their temperament. You have to understand where they're coming from if it's someone you're close to. That requires empathy. You don't have to know exactly what they're going through. You don't have to put yourself in their shoes. But you have to walk alongside them
Care.
very, very,
Care.
very tenderly,
Yes.
with care and with concern.
Yes.
And that's about
And
it. And
support.
support, when you do that, you love yourself, you have a good life, and you're good to other people, and it works out. And you
Yes.
learn how to be a good people picker, because you know what your blind spots are, you know what your triggers are.
Right. Well, you now can see your tribe, your vibe tribe, because you're all riding on the same frequency. All right.
I
So
guess that's a way.
you're gonna go with those people that have already done the work, that are in that vibe tribe, that are caring, kindness, loving people, because you know that together you create more harmony. And they bring more harmony to you and vice versa. And the more harmony that we can ricochet out or ripple out into the world, the more that I think it will create the change. The inspiration begets invitation. So when we're inspired by that harmony, that peace that other people are in, then it's the invitation. Well, if they can feel like that, maybe I should start taking the journey myself.
Couldn't say it better myself. Very well said.
So really that's all we can do is give people the materials and give people the reason why and give people that invitation through that inspiration. But it's up to them and how they apply it and whether they apply it. All we can do is pray they do,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to be better human beings. And that means there are better human beings in the world, and we're going to see the tilt into that higher vibration that is so desperately needed on this planet. And for us as a humanity, because that is what we're here to do, to rise up, not with pitchforks against each other, but with loving arms, loving care, because that's where creativity of possibilities grows, not destruction, but of possibilities. And
And
that's
it,
what
and
we
it
would like
shouldn't
to
be
see.
and it shouldn't be that much work. I mean,
No.
it's work, but it's organic. This is how we're meant
Yes.
to be. We're meant to be kind and helpful,
Yes.
and not
That
just self promoting, and territorial,
self-obsessed.
self-obsessed. Yeah,
There's
we're
enough
meant.
narcissists in the world, folks. Let's not be
Well,
one.
yeah, yeah, there's. Well,
Now,
narcissism is good to a point. You have to have healthy narcissism, which is
healthy.
Healthy
based
narcissism.
healthy, self-care and self-love, I call
Right. I
that,
mean, when you're
because
about three, you should stop needing everyone to watch you and know be the center
right.
of attention.
Yes.
But until then, it's normal.
Yes.
You have to have good self-esteem, but
Yes.
that's where it ends.
Well, the narcissists that we see as adults are
Yeah.
people that were kind of not taught empathy or not taught compassion and maybe not given attention that they
You're talking
needed.
about
So this, yes, so
narcissistic personality. I
yeah,
know. You're
so
not talking about.
they're still looking for it. That's the trouble, right? At anybody else's expense. And that's not what we're here for. We're not here to
Of
find
course
our
not.
joy at somebody else's expense. We're here to find
Exactly.
our joy in order to share that beautiful
But
joy.
but the issue is that people get what they want at other people's expense unwittingly. I
Yes,
mean, there are people that love parents that love their children, and they can't help themselves because they don't know what's driving them.
right,
They just know they
right.
feel a rage. They feel like, okay,
Yes,
the kid's doing this. They're not appreciating the toy. I didn't have anything when I grew up.
yeah.
I came, from nothing, and they don't appreciate it. Why am I giving them this and that? They go ballistic. They don't understand what their trigger is. And so people need to get a grip and they need to
Yeah.
learn
And stop
what's true.
imposing it on that poor child that then's going to
Right,
grow up thinking there's something else wrong and
exactly.
and the whole
And
domino
then you
effect.
right, and then you grow up and you have to do the work yourself. Say, I
Exactly.
wasn't a bad kid. So you have to know what ticks you off and you have to know what makes you tick. It's that simple.
And take
But
ownership, take self-responsibility, be willing to do the work. Nobody's here to do it for you. They're here to help
exactly.
you along your way with the tools, the skills, the wisdom, the
And
support, the
and and
cheerleading. They're here to help you. Everybody
and,
wants you to get there, but you've
and
got to
these
be
are
willing to do it.
not things that need to be relegated to remedial psychotherapy. You don't
No,
have to be a patient.
no.
You know, these are things you can learn to do yourself at home, and they become habits. It becomes automatic way. It's an automatic way to think.
Be your
It's
own
a
patient. Be your own doctor, right?
in
You know,
a way your own healer,
yes,
your own
yes,
self-discover, your own discoverer, you
yes.
know and knowing that there are actually neurophysiologic benefits, psychoneuroendocrine immunologic benefits to this kind of knowing yourself it's a plus. It
It
helps.
is. It is. Absolutely. You just see through life differently. It isn't the rose-colored glasses, as some people think. It's seeing all the beautiful possibilities, all the wonderful opportunities, all the things that we can collectively, individually and collectively be. It's the enthusiasm. It's the
And
creativity. It is the optimism. It is the everything that we have sold ourselves short on, but is still out there ready for us to discover. So I always think,
exactly.
keep wonderment alive. Keep
That's a
wonderment alive in your
lovely way,
and
lovely way.
be discoverers of yourself, what your part is in the world, where it's going to take you, and allow that journey to happen. Don't be your own worst enemy, because we are, when we deny ourselves those feelings, we've got to go through them. We've got to look at inserting those new patterns. We've got to be kind and caring and loving towards ourselves so that we can attract that same loving vibration out there, but also be that abundance, be that enrichment, be that enlightenment on self, because you have no idea how it rubs off on other people and becomes the trigger that helps them on their path.
Exactly.
How do people get hold of the book? How do they get hold of you?
Well, the book can be purchased anywhere that books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Walmart, Kmart, Target, anything like that. But everything's on my website, which is JackieHeller.com or JacquelineHeller.com. I like Jackie, casual, but Jacqueline's my full name. So
Right.
it's JacquelineHeller.com.
And
J
Heller is
C
Heller, folks. And
Yes. Yeah. And Jacqueline is JACQUELINE.
right. And if you're going into Amazon, Yesterday Never Sleeps, and put in the full name, Jacqueline Heller, MD, for the book to come up. And of course, they can
Exactly.
reach you. You're also on Facebook, Jackie.md.9. They've got email here too, where they can reach out to you. And I'm really glad that you retired, because you've gone to that next level of a book now that is beyond the one patient at a time.
Clearly.
That is in, making any, I think, be the healer of yourself, but with the wisdom. with the wisdom and the knowledge of somebody that dedicated her life to this path, that now is sharing it in a way, not only the scientific knowledge of what she knows, but the emotional and spiritual knowledge that she knows through her own journey and her own self-discovery. And the merging those two together really becomes illumination. It's the balance of both. And scientists will tell you, those that have evolved, know that living on this higher frequency of the love vibration, as I call it, is actually measurable. And that
Absolutely.
people living on that level are healthier, happier, and more productive people, right? So let's find that balance within ourselves. Let's be willing to do the work. Let's read the book. Let's follow the steps, and let's invest in ourselves, because the more you invest yourself, the more enriched and abundant you become, and the more that you serve society, and the more you serve society, more society grows into a happy plane that serves us
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't go into it in this way as far as language goes, as far as speaking about it, but this stuff goes well beyond the physical and mental body.
Yeah.
This goes into the spiritual, the soul level, the etheric, and
Yes.
it radiates, it extends well beyond us. And we learn that we have a ripple effect. We touch a lot of people without even knowing it. And so we have power.
We
And
do.
we have power. Sometimes we don't know how we wield it. So that's
Mhm.
important. That's an important thing to learn also.
Yeah. To be empowering. People seek power. And I say
To
seek
be
to be
empowering.
empowering. Right? That's where
Absolutely.
the power lies, in being empowering with others. Thank you so much for sharing here today. This has
Thank
been
you.
really illuminating. It's been great. Yesterday Never Sleeps for Jacqueline Heller, MD, found it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and everywhere. You can also get it on her site, JackieHeller.com. This is a book that you should give yourself, but don't forget Christmas is around the corner. And I always say, giving a book, it never ever dies. It's something that keeps on giving, but it's also a beautiful gift to maybe give to your girlfriends and say, let's all read this. And let's come back together in January and discuss what it triggered or what it opened up. And let's then have that conversation and be supportive of each other. The book is the tool, it's the opening of the door, it's the reveal, it's also what you can do in your own healing. Now talk about it. Now talk about it with your friends and what the book did for you, what it's done for each other, and how it can expand out in helping others. Because if it's helped you, I promise you, it's going to help. You're going to help others because of it. So it's very, very important. So book club, books go for Christmas, get everybody together and have that conversation. Be willing to invest and do the work in yourself, because you need you and we need you. So until next time, folks. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.